In 1368, as the Yuan Dynasty collapsed, merchants in Beijing refused to accept government notes. The world Owa's first paper money, once the pride of Kublai Khan's empire, was now so worthless that shopkeepers used it to patch windows and peasants burned it for heat. The currency that had once powered the greatest land empire in history had become a symbol of ruin. The emotional echo was disbelief, the pride of a nation, the pain of hunger, the shock of waking up to a world where money meant nothing. A single morning revealed the true cost of printing power. How did the world's most advanced money become its greatest curse? The answer is in the way trust, once broken, can turn a currency into dust. The Panic of 1929, the hyperinflation of Weimar Germany, the uncertainty of every modern money crisis. Each time, leaders promised stability. Each time, the rules changed and the dominoes fell faster. The contrast is stark, the promise of progress, the pain of collapse, the shock of seeing fortunes vanish overnight. But to see how the disaster began, we need to go back to the birth of paper money in the Mongol Empire. In the early 11th century, long before Marco Polo ever set foot in the East, the world's first true fiat money was already changing hands in the bustling markets of Sichuan. The Song Dynasty, facing a shortage of copper for coins, authorized wealthy merchants to issue paper notes, jiaozi, backed only by the promise of future payment. The experiment was a revelation. Suddenly, a slip of mulberry bark could buy a horse, a house, or a shipload of tea. The emotional impact was wonder and skepticism. In the crowded streets of Kaifeng and Hangzhou, traders weighed the risks and rewards of this new money. The government soon took over, issuing its own notes, Jiao Chao, and building a network of official exchange offices. The Song state's innovation was not just about convenience, it was about control. Paper money let the emperor tax, spend, and mobilize resources faster than any rival. The system worked, at first. The Song economy boomed. Trade flourished along the Grand Canal and the Silk Road. Merchants could move wealth across provinces without the risk of bandits or the burden of heavy coins. The emotional echo was confidence. The world's first monetary innovation had made China richer, safer, and more connected. But the new money was only as strong as the trust that backed it. The government promised to redeem notes for coin, but as wars and deficits mounted, the temptation to print more grew. The first cracks appeared: inflation, counterfeiting, and the slow erosion of faith in the paper promise. By the 1200s, the Mongols swept in, conquering the Song and inheriting the world's most advanced financial system. They saw the power of paper money and the risks. The emotional tension was clear: the pride of invention, the pain of abuse, the shock of seeing a tool for prosperity become a weapon of control. How did a scrap of paper become more valuable than gold? Why did the world trust China's money for centuries? The answer is in the way innovation, trust, and state power can create and destroy wealth on a scale never seen before. But the Mongols would take this invention and push it to its breaking point. In 1260, Kublai Khan ascended the throne of the Mongol Empire and set his sights on ruling all of China. He was a conqueror, but also a visionary. He saw that armies could win battles, but money won empires. The Mongols inherited the Song dynasty's paper money system, but Kublai Khan would transform it into a tool of imperial power. The decree was sweeping. All taxes, tributes, and official payments were to be made in government-issued notes. Chow, gold, silver, and copper coins were banned from circulation. Merchants, peasants, and nobles alike were ordered to accept the new currency. The emotional impact was shock and awe. A single edict turned paper into the law of the land. Kublai Khan's paper money was more than a convenience. It was a legal tender, backed not by metal, but by the threat of imperial punishment. Refusing to accept the notes was a crime. The state held a monetary monopoly. Only the government could issue money, and only its money was valid. The emotional echo was fear and obedience, the pride of a unified empire, the pain of losing control over one's own wealth. The system worked, at first. The Yuan Dynasty's vast territory from Korea to Persia was stitched together by a single currency. Trade boomed along the Silk Road. Taxes flowed into the imperial treasury. The Mongol court collected seigniorage, the profit from issuing money at little cost. The empire's power seemed unbreakable, but the seeds of disaster were already sown. The temptation to print more notes was irresistible. Wars in the south, rebellions in the west, and the endless costs of court and conquest demanded ever more money. The government issued new series of notes, each one larger than the last. The emotional tension was mounting. The pride of expansion, the pain of inflation, the shock of seeing prices rise faster than the ink could dry. Merchants grumbled. Foreign traders, once eager to accept yuan notes, began to demand silver and gold. The state responded with more force, banning private coinage, punishing dissent, and insisting that paper was as good as metal. But trust was slipping away. How did Kublai Khan turn paper into power? What happens when a ruler controls every coin and contract? The answer is in the way absolute authority can create a system that works, until it is pushed too far. But the more notes the Khan printed, the more fragile the system became. After Kublai Khan's death, the Yuan Dynasty's grip on China began to slip. The empire was vast, the court bloated, and the frontiers restless. Successive emperors faced rebellions, invasions, and the endless costs of holding together a patchwork of peoples and provinces. The solution, again and again, was the printing press. The government issued new series of notes, each larger, each more desperate. Paper money flooded the markets. The emotional impact was confusion and anxiety. The pride of a mighty empire, the pain of seeing prices double, then triple, then soar beyond comprehension. Wars in the south and west drained the treasury. The Mongol court, once disciplined, became a den of corruption. Eunuchs and ministers took bribes to issue new notes. Local officials counterfeited their own money, flooding the countryside with fake bills. The term counterfeit became a daily fear. Merchants weighed every note, testing for authenticity, but the difference between real and fake was often just a matter of ink. The economic term hyperinflation became a lived nightmare. By the 1340s, prices in Beijing were rising so fast that a sack of rice could cost a year ORS wages by noon and twice as much by sunset. The government tried to fix the problem by issuing even more notes, each one promising value that no one believed. The emotional echo was despair. The pride of empire gave way to the pain of hunger. The shock of seeing money, once a symbol of Mongol power, reduced to worthless scraps. The confidence crisis was total. Foreign traders refused to accept yuan notes. Peasants and merchants hoarded silver, copper, and even grain. The black market thrived. The official economy withered. The spiral was relentless. The more the government printed, the less the notes were worth. The more worthless the notes, the more the government printed. The empire's wealth was slipping through its fingers, and the world was watching. Why did the world's first paper money become its first hyperinflation? How did fake notes and real greed destroy an empire's wealth? The answer is in the way unchecked power, war, and corruption can turn innovation into disaster. The final collapse would come not with a bang, but with a whimper and a worthless note. By the 1360s, the Yuan dynasty was collapsing under the weight of its own paper promises. The Mongol court, once feared from the Pacific to the Danube, was now besieged by rebels, famine, and a currency no one trusted. In Beijing, merchants refused to accept government notes. Peasants bartered grain and cloth. Soldiers, unpaid for months, deserted or joined the uprisings. The emotional impact was exhaustion and betrayal. The pride of empire, the pain of hunger, the shock of seeing money, once the engine of trade, reduced to trash. The term currency collapse became a lived reality. The world's first paper money experiment had ended in ashes. As the yuan fell, the people of China turned their backs on paper. Markets demanded silver and copper. Foreign traders, once eager for chow, now insisted on hard metal. The emotional echo was relief and caution, the pride of survival, the pain of lost savings, the hope that the next system would be safer. The Ming dynasty, rising from the chaos, restored metal coinage. The new rulers banned paper money, melted down the old notes, and minted copper cash. The term flight to hard assets became a national instinct. For centuries, Chinese merchants would trust silver and gold over any government promise. The monetary reset was total. The Ming's copper coins and Spanish silver dollars became the new standard. The world at its oldest and most advanced economy had learned a brutal lesson. Money is only as strong as the trust that backs it. How did a nation's money become so worthless it was burned for fuel? Why did the world turn its back on paper for centuries? The answer is in the way trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and how every reset is both an end and a beginning. But the story of inflation didn't end in China. It became a warning for every age. In 1720, John Law's France was swept by a mania for paper money. The Mississippi Company's notes, backed by colonial dreams, flooded Paris. At first, the new money fueled a boom, but as the government printed more to cover debts, trust evaporated. The price of bread soared. The streets filled with riots. The emotional echo was panic, the pride of innovation, the pain of collapse, the shock of seeing fortunes vanish in a single season. During the American Revolution, the Continental Congress printed continentals to pay for war. The notes quickly lost value. Not worth a continental became a byword for worthlessness. The cycle repeated. Easy money, lost trust, and a desperate search for something real. In 1923, Weimar Germany's mark became a symbol of hyperinflation. Prices doubled by the day. Families burned cash for heat. The emotional toll was devastation, the pride of a nation, the pain of hunger, the shock of waking up to new rules. The economic term store of value became a question, not an answer. In Zimbabwe, the printing presses ran until a loaf of bread cost trillions. In Venezuela, the bolivar became confetti. Each time leaders promised stability. Each time the rules changed and the dominoes fell faster. The pattern is clear. When trust in money is lost, people flee to hard assets: gold, silver, land, foreign currency. The term monetary reset is not just a theory, it's a recurring event. The psychology of inflation is contagious. Are today's inflation fears just history repeating? What did Kublai Khan's disaster teach the world about trust and money? The answer is in the way every system, no matter how advanced, is haunted by the need for something real. So what can you do as the next inflation storm brews? Kublai Khan's paper money disaster is more than a footnote in the history of finance. It is a warning, etched in the ashes of burned notes, the ruins of an empire, and the memories of every society that has watched its money die. The emotional echo is timeless, the pride of a nation at its peak, the pain of collapse, the shock of waking up to new rules. Every era has its inflation storm. The Yuan Dynasty's cow, John Law's livres, Weimar's marks, Zimbabwe's dollars, each began as a promise, a tool for progress, a symbol of trust. Each ended in panic, barter, and the desperate search for something real. The cycle repeats. Easy money, lost trust, and the scramble for survival. The lesson is clear. Money is only as strong as the faith that backs it. When leaders print without restraint, when trust is sacrificed for convenience, the result is always the same: collapse, reset, and the long, painful rebuilding of confidence. The cost is not just measured in prices or exchange rates, but in the lives upended, the dreams destroyed, and the futures rewritten. Will you be ready when money turns to dust again? Will you recognize the signals before the headlines hit? The answers are hidden in the past, if you know where to look. Don't assume the rules of money are set in stone. Watch for the signals: rising debt, sudden deals, the quiet transfer of strategic assets. Pay attention to the canaries, gold flows, new alliances, and the fine print in every contract. In every reset, someone is early, someone is late, and someone never even realizes a reset happened. Will you be ready when the next inflation crisis comes? Will you recognize the signals before the headlines hit? Subscribe for more cinematic economic history, and learn how to spot the next inflation crisis before it hits.